Titled What is the creepiest your young child has ever said to you? Story 1. I was tucking in my 2-year-old. He said, "Goodbye, Dad." I said, "No, we say good night." He said, "I know. But this time it's goodbye." Had to check on him a few times to make sure he was still there. Story 2. While changing my daughter in front of the open closet door, she kept looking around me and laughing. I asked her what was so funny. She said, "The man." To which I replied, "What man?" She then pointed at the closet and said, "The man with the snake neck." I turn around and nothing was there. I'm afraid to look into the history of my house to see if anyone hung themselves in the closet. At least she wasn't scared. Story 3. My then 3-year-old had a few gems. Him, "I was so mad at you, I was gonna destroy you." Me, "Yeah, how so?" Him, "I was gonna throw you in a volcano." Me, "Why didn't you?" Him, "I don't know where a volcano is." Me, "So we good?" Him, "For now." The other one, him, "Too bad the babysitter died." Me, "No, she didn't, bud, she's just not here today." Him, "Or she's in the freezer," while staring at the freezer. Me, "You're pretty creepy sometimes, bud." Him, just smiles. Story 4. My mother died a few weeks ago. I went to her house to get some things and she had a huge collection of stuffed animals that I brought home for the kids. My son, 5, and I were awake early about 3 days after her death, and he was playing with the stuffed animals in his room when he came out screaming and crying hysterically. This never happens, he's a very tough boy for 5. Now I was freaked, asked him what was wrong, and he was legit terrified. I had never seen him like this before or after. He said that one of the stuffed animals moved. He said he was playing with the other ones and the little 2-inch beanie stuffed dog moved, turned its head and looked at him. He said he threw a doll at it and its face got mean. He refused to go back in that room or leave my side until I put the stuffed dog in the trash, not the inside trash or the outside trash near the house, but the dumpster down the street. I don't believe in ghosts or anything, but carrying that thing out to the trash I got goosebumps and felt super freaked out. Story 5. My son tells me stories of scary Uncle Michael in his bedroom at night. He says he's a grey man that looks like his uncle and he climbs on walls and calls out to him, and one night he tried to eat him. Yep, nightmare fuel. Story 6. I used to babysit this kid, who was overall very sweet, but when I would watch him overnight, he'd come into the room I was sleeping in and just stare at me, but he always listened when I told him to go back to bed. One time he asked me if I was asleep, and when I said no, he said, "Okay, I'll come back later," and left. I was scared at first, but then I remembered that he was 6 years old and I could dropkick him if I had to. Story 7. When my sister was a kid, she used to sit up in the middle of the night and stare at me or the wall. I would wake up and she'd be staring in the dark. One night she was doing this and without turning to me, she said, "I fucking see you," in a weird low voice, and she laid back down and went to sleep. Story 8. When my daughter was 3, she told me to get out of bed or she'd peel my skin off with a knife. Also, just before the pandemic hit, we were eating out and a man got up from another table to use the restroom. As he passed our table, she pointed at him and practically yelled, "Hey mama, how much blood does that guy have?" He laughed nervously and walked a little faster. Both really threw me because she's typically a sweet kid and non-violent, gets concerned when people's animals are hurt, etc., and we monitor WHST. She watches pretty diligently. She's 5 now, and hasn't said anything like that since. Story 9. It wasn't just one thing my son said, but for 3 days he kept waking up in the middle of the night crying cause his blankets were full of smoke. They were always fine. I washed his blankets every day hoping it would help him sleep. During the day he would talk a lot about the house being on fire. It freaked me out. I had my husband check our smoke detectors every night for a while. That was a year ago and we haven't had a fire, but just the way my son was so sure our house was going to catch fire really freaked me out. Story 10. My daughter, when she was like 2, and not too long after my mother passed away, was fixated staring in the upper corner of our ceiling, and we asked her what she was looking at and she said Nana. Story 11. I wish I could cut you open and wear you like a suit. Then you'd never leave me. Did not like hearing that. Story 12. My little girl, when she was about 4 or 5, drew a picture of a creepy-looking girl with black frizzy hair. When we asked who it was, she just said, "That's the girl who hurts me in my dreams." So yeah, safe to say that was one picture that didn't end up stuck on the fridge. Story 13. Not really said, more like done, but my, then 7, cousin had been sleeping in the bed beside me. I turn over out of exhaustion of watching the movie and see him staring at me, crying silently. I ask him what's wrong several times, but he then, not saying a word, just turns over. I was freaked out, felt like I couldn't move, as soon as I turned over until he turned over. God, I was scared as fuck to try and sleep that night. I asked him about it the next day, and he says he doesn't remember. My mom said either, A, he has night terrors. B, I was under sleep paralysis. One of the weirdest, eeriest things that ever happened to me. Story 14. One time I was holding my 2-year-old niece and I told her I loved her. With the straightest face, she whispered, "I hate you." Her mother must have seen the look on my face and said, "Did she tell you she hates you?" I nodded, still rattled. She said, "That's her new thing. She does it to be funny and I usually laugh." It was the creepiest exchange. Story 15. I was babysitting this 4-year-old and she was playing with Legos and dropped them and screeched, "No please Mr. Moch." He was the old dude who lived here and died in that room I was in. I quit the next day. Story 16. My 3-year-old daughter stood next to her newborn brother and looked at him for a while, then turned and looked at me and said, "Daddy, it's a monster. We should bury it." Story 17. Daddy sleep, then pushing my head underwater at the pool. Story 18. Friend of mine's kid, a 4-year-old girl, once told me she had a secret, then whispered in my ear, "I'm evil." Story 19. My nephew told me how my grandfather died. He knew details including what my grandfather was watching on TV. What makes it creepy? My grandfather died years ago. My nephew was 3 when he told me this and knew things that neither I nor my sister, his mom, knew, so it couldn't have been something he overheard. Not that we spend a lot of time talking about what my grandfather was watching on TV when he died anyways. The kicker? He was named in honor of this same grandfather. Story 20. When I was your age. Then tells a random story. My other mommy before you. Then tells a random story. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, leave a colored heart emoji of your choice. You can check out more videos like this onto my channel. Until next time. Bye.